Music appreciation 101.
What's up, everybody? It's Scoobert Doobert. Welcome back to Love Music More. I am joined with my good buddy Håkan of I Don't Speak French, Indieshake, Swedish Red Elephant, the man, the myth, the legend. Great buddy, and I'm so excited to talk to you. How's it going, Håkan? How are you?
Oh, it's great. I'm in the middle of nowhere in the forest.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, in the south of Sweden. Just going for a swim. So it's as good as it can be.
I love
I
it.
would say.
I love it. Well, maybe we should start with the thing that's in the forefront of everyone's mind. What is your take on Swedish Chef? Because I know you have a good hot take on it.
Well, it's actually like the actual sway of the kind of pronunciation of the actual gibberish
Uh-huh.
is kind of correct in a sense, but the actual words are just like nah.
So
But if you would like, would do like a Swedish person talking with an English like trying like a Swedish accent for English,
Mhm.
it would be something like, "Yes, hello, this is Håkan from Sweden." So it's kind of the similar.
little
I guess that's
bouncy.
kind of I guess that's where they got it from. But he's cool. He's
Yeah.
cool in my book.
Cool in your book. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm really excited to talk about your musical process, the music scene that you've come up in Sweden, and then also just kind of what has inspired you to take on so many different roles. I know that you play a bunch of different instruments, you make different genres. So let's start just kind of from the jump. What got you into music? What made you fall in love with it?
Well, I kind of fell in love with music like from a really young age.
Yeah.
My mom was really into music. She was like hippie in the 70s, like a forefront feminist, so she was a really big inspiration to me. So she gave me a lot of, Beatles and Loving Spoonful and Beach Boys and a lot of those like really cool 60s, 70s bands. So I grew up kind of with those vinyls and stuff. And then from my dad's side, I kind of got, Creedence Clearwater Revival, kind of more like the Southern rock
Mm-hmm.
type thing. And then I have a brother who's 9 years older than me, um, so basically, when I was a kid, he was just like getting into like the skate scene.
Cool.
So you had like
Perfect. Yeah.
the 90s, like Green Day just dropped Dookie. You had
Yes.
Millencolin, all these bands. So it's kind of the perfect mixing pot for getting into all these different genres. And my parents were always like, our kids should play an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So my brother played piano, and I wanted to play piano as well, but my brother was like, "No, no, no,
I
no,
called
no,
dibs. I
no,
called dibs.
nobody thinks it's cool with piano. You should
Okay.
play
Okay.
guitar."
Nice.
So that's why. That's why I got into playing guitar, and
Cool.
then it's sort of just like I always felt like I was kind of uninspired by playing other people's songs.
Yeah. Yep.
I had this kind of innate longing for writing my own stuff.
Mhm.
So I think my first song I wrote like when I was 8 years old or something like that.
Really?
Uh,
That's super early.
yeah,
That's awesome. Oh, cool.
I still have it. It's
Yeah.
super lame.
I don't know. I could see that being
So it's like two chords and it's like I hate to love you. Da, 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 da.
It's so good. That's great. That's probably better than mine. Mine was dumb.
No, for sure. How old were you when you started?
I think I wrote my first song when I was like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
But it was bad. It was like called oh, no, I don't even want to. It's so bad.
But that's kind of the process. You need
It
to do
is.
bad shit. It's like,
Exactly. Well,
and then
that's, like, one of the
yeah.
things I think people, like, that are starting out get really intimidated by because they hear, like, "Hey, like, been writing songs for" how long you been writing songs for at this point now? Like
Well, I guess it's about 20 years.
yeah, right? It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, maybe don't compare yourself when you're just starting out to somebody that has 20 years of experience." Like, could you
No,
imagine
no,
doing that to any other thing? It's like, "I'm an engineer, and I'm learning how to, like, build roads or something, and I'm gonna compare myself to somebody with 20 years of experience doing
no,
that." It's like, that's
it's like
ridiculous.
just yeah, and I think, like, with modern technology and
Yeah,
kind of everyone being so connected, it's
yeah,
so hard to kind of fail without
okay,
getting such a flack for it.
yeah, yeah,
'Cause I remember growing up, like, before cell phones,
yes.
like, or, like, before, like, smartphones,
Mhm.
and, you could play, like, a really shitty show at, like, a local
That's a
establishment,
good point.
and there would be, like, 5 friends, and nobody would care
Yeah.
because, like, nobody had access to the internet, you know?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's just like but nowadays, like, if you do, like, a show as a kid, somebody's gonna post it on TikTok, and
Yeah,
they're gonna make fun of you, and it's
yeah,
like it's much harsher kind of reality, I think,
yeah. I agree,
in that sense.
I agree.
So, yeah, so that's kind of where I started out,
Yeah,
and then I got, so then I got really into, like, punk rock
cool.
and hardcore, so I
Mhm,
played, like, straight edge hardcore,
mhm.
uh, and I played in a rap metal band.
Wait, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
I played
That's
in a rap
awesome.
metal band for, like, 6 years.
That's
Uh,
awesome. What
w
did you play? Were you playing guitar? Were you singing or
I was rapping and playing
rapping?
guitar.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's so
yeah,
cool.
I can send you a link later.
Yeah,
I
dude,
the it's
totally.
actually it's like the music video is still on YouTube, I think.
Yes. That's awesome. Yeah, if you're feeling bold, I can drop the link in the description, but
Oh, for
okay,
sure.
all right, that so check the
I'm
description.
I'm game.
Yes.
Uh, so yeah, and then kind of I was always kind of just looking for the next kind of thing to inspire the
Mhm.
next kind of so I was, like, borrowing records, kind of just whatever I could find, every genre, um, and then I, like, worked just, like, cut mowing grass, and I started my own studio when I was 15 in my parents', like, garage, and I would record all my friends for free, and, I kind of found this passion for producing stuff and
Mhm.
recording stuff,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's kind of then just kind of snowballed
Right.
and
And then just keep
continued.
going. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So
That's so
yeah,
good.
yeah. I guess that's it.
What inspired you on, like, the electronic side? What kind of made you get into, like, dance music and I don't know, wanna explore that genre as well?
Well, that's kind of funny story because
Yeah.
I actually hated dance music.
Perfect.
So when it first came out, when Avicii got big,
Uh-huh.
like when Swedish dance music, Swedish EDM was really, really getting big,
Yep.
like me and, my partner in crime, Louise, we were, like, hating on EDM
Mhm.
because we were, like, indie kids, we came from
Totally.
DIY scene, we came from punk,
Yeah.
we're just like, "EDM is such a shitty genre, but they don't know what they're doing." It's just like and then we just kind of fell into doing top lines because
Cool.
someone was
Yeah.
asking us, "Yeah,
So
like,
what is a
would you
top
do a
line?
top
What how does that work just for listeners that might not know what that term is?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like a top line is basically you have 2 parts of a song. You have the instrumental, like the music, and you have the top line, which is the vocal melody and the lyrics and the vocal take. And so it's basically the 2 parts of a song, the instrumental and the top line. So in electronic dance music, it's usually a lot of the producers and the DJs, they do their instrumentals and productions, and then you look for someone to do the top line. And the top liner is often someone who's, yeah, like an indie artist or
Right.
like
Totally.
somebody who's a bit more non-mainstream, I guess.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why we fell into that hole. And then I just kind of, you know, you start working with it, you kind of fall in love with it, you kind of fall in love with the different intricate parts, and you find the craft in it, and
Yes.
like
Yeah.
how somebody just spends hours getting like the perfect like amount of bass and like punch in the kick drum,
Mhm.
and to really make the club go wild. And it's, yeah, so I guess that's kind of why
Cool.
we kind of fell in love with it.
Yeah. No, it's funny how, like, relationships with genres can change over time. Like, I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
like, I got into music school, and I did not like jazz because the jazz kids were mean, and,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, "I don't like this genre," and then, like, now I'm obsessed, but had this different color of, like, how I felt about myself versus how the, like, vibes that they put off, and I see that sometimes with, like, music and identity, especially, like, traditionally, like, punk hates disco, and disco is like the
Mhm.
evolution. EDM kind of evolves from disco, and punk and turns into hardcore and post-hardcore, and like naturally are at odds. But now that's all kind of broken down, which I think is for the
Yeah,
better. Because like, how boring would that be if you only listen to like one genre your entire life? You like change as a person, but you're
yeah.
like identify as only this genre.
Yeah, I think, like, it's so, like, limiting to do genres, and that's kind of, why I started I Don't Speak French as
Hmm.
well. It was
Cool.
just kind of because I felt limited by the bands I were in at the time.
Yeah.
They were kind of very boxed in, and you
Hmm.
would be like, "Oh, we need to play strictly punk or strictly this,"
Yeah.
and you just wanna do music that's kind of boundaryless,
Yes.
and yeah, I totally agree. I think, like, and I totally resonate with that story about, like, the jazz kids being mean, like, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
I remember that from music school as well, like,
yeah.
all the guys who played, like, the Rosanna
Mhm.
drum beat.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Totally.
And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that dude can play drums." And you're like, alright."
Yeah.
It's a weird world, yeah,
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
is. But it mellows out. I feel like part of it too is everyone's just trying to kinda, like, find their way, so they're emulating the other people,
Yeah.
like how, like, Whiplash, that movie was, it's like
Oh, it's so good. I love Whiplash.
it's really
It's
good.
like it's such a great film.
Totally.
But it's like, yeah, because I think, like, that's kind of the fun part about, like, music nowadays.
Mhm.
It feels much more boundaryless, as you
I agree.
say. It's
I
much
agree.
more like melting pot. You have, like,
Yeah.
genres like hyperpop,
Yeah.
and, like, every day I feel like I'm checking Spotify or whatever, and I find, like, a band kind of breaking the boundaries
Mhm.
like, genre I've heard before, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Shit, this is super cool."
It is.
It's, yeah, I think it's a really interesting sonically interesting time we live in.
I agree, and I think part of it's like the medium. Like, I'm getting all those like weird Spotify for you playlists that are like
Mhm.
late night sad but driving. I'm like, okay, that's like that's technically I guess that's a genre now because if you
Yeah,
make music that's like I don't know, I can feel it coming in the air tonight, Phil Collins kind of beat. It's like that's
yeah,
that's kind of that. So it's like okay, somewhere loosely associated with that feeling that je ne sais quoi, that to speak
yeah.
French.
It's like more it's yeah, it's like more a mood than an actual genre.
Right, right, which is a
It's a feeling.
yeah, and it's that's a freeing thing, I think, to write to, particularly for people that have done film and TV, so I wanna talk to you a little bit about that, like,
Yeah,
commercial work, scoring and stuff, because I think a lot of that is an interesting parallel to the way that, you know, pop music has evolved, where
yeah.
so I'd love to get your take on just kind of what that process is like, how you experience that, and then how maybe that has informed some of the pop music that's obviously is more on the creative and fulfilling side,
Yeah.
but like one they seem to talk to each other a little bit. So I'm just curious your take.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think, like, commercials is actually a pretty interesting subject because,
Hmm.
like, there's, I always tell people, like, when they talk about commercial and commercial songs and stuff like that, I like, "Well, have you seen a car commercial that has, like, a commercial song?"
Yeah.
have you ever seen a car commercial with a commercial song? No,
Hmm.
like because all these brands are looking for stuff that is like pushing the envelope, sounding like interesting
Yeah.
sonically. Like a lot of really cool indie bands I've
Hmm.
found for like commercials,
For sure.
and I think that's kind of a really, really nice kind of symbiotic relationship
Yeah.
where like these big corporations kind of enjoy taking the tiny indie artist and being like, "Oh, here you go. Here's some money. We like your song."
Hmm.
It's I think it's really, really interesting, and it's kind of interesting how it's become that because if you look at like historically,
Yep.
you have like going from like the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you have this kind of written for TV music, and then it kind of evolved into, I don't know why, but it kind of
Hmm.
evolved into, I think it's kind of, you have such a short time period
Okay.
for selling something,
Hmm.
so you want to have something that's sonically interesting as well,
Yes.
maybe.
And like of that moment, like that thing that feels like 2023.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And it's like if you just get something that's just, I don't know, like a stock library or a composer that's, focused on underscore and stuff like that, then I don't think you get as much like the soul of that moment as somebody that's making it.
No,
Yeah.
I think a perfect example of that
Yeah.
is, and like one of the first examples I remember kind of visually
Hmm.
is, I think it's a Samsung ad maybe, or if it's like but it's like 100,000 like bouncy balls bouncing down
Oh, I
uh
remember that
s-
one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
San Francisco.
Uh-huh.
You
Uh-huh.
remember
I
that?
remember that one. Yeah.
And it's like that Swedish singer-songwriter Jose Gonzalez,
Mm,
I think. It's like Heartbeats, his
mm,
cover of The Knife.
mm.
Um, I think it's that song.
I don't totally
Don't
remember.
quote me though.
I will.
But 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 I just remember that so vividly being such a defining kind of, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that is something to be said for that. Like n- if you kind of remember an ad 15 years later and being like, oh, you kind of succeeded.
Totally. No, totally. And it's actually funny because I was just joking about the I can feel it coming in the air tonight.
Yeah.
That was kind of like a moment I think that pulled pop music deeper into the like relationship. I know obviously that was in a movie, or
Yeah.
not in a movie, in a TV show, but
Yeah.
like those feelings. I think maybe it was like the '80s where you got like you get Top Gun and all of these different things that are or like Footloose or whatever that are pulling in pop music and
Yeah.
relating them. Saturday Night Fever with the Bee Gees, like all of that starts getting closer and closer and closer, and then like you're saying, like phone commercials, like Apple and
Yeah.
Samsung and stuff, and now this is like a discovery vehicle because now we can Shazam stuff and that kind
Yeah.
of opens it wide up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of gets like a competition almost
Yeah.
where like the companies wanna be like the new curator, kind
Yeah.
of the
Right.
new, and the music supervisors are just like, yeah, yeah, it's they are the new playlist,
Yeah, I know.
editorial playlist
Exactly.
in a
Well,
sense.
they're one of the few people that actually have like a broadcasting platform, like
Yeah,
that
yeah, for sure.
can get the word out. It's like we don't have like the Ed Sullivan show or something to like,
No.
like there's like Saturday Night Live, but it's not nearly even at the scale that it used to be. Like, there's just less places to just blast it out. Commercials are one of the best ways because they're across platforms. They're on Hulu, they're on like on
Yeah,
broadcast TV, and they're everywhere.
yeah. Like I remember you got like was it, you got a commercial for, it was like a
Yeah,
beer brand, right?
yeah. Coors Light, which is an American beer.
Ah, right, Coors Light,
Yeah.
yeah. It's an American brand, so
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
suck at those,
No,
but yeah.
totally.
So
A
Coors Light.
foreign imported beer, Coors Light, in Sweden. It would be expensive actually to drink that uh that standard beer in Europe.
So was Coors Light the
Yeah.
brand who was in the controversy recently,
No,
where
no, that was a
everyone
different
was,
one. That was Bud Light.
all right, all right, all right, Bud Light, all
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
or controversy. It depends on how you see it for sure.
Exactly. Well, either way, I think it's a controversy. It's like,
Yeah, all right.
did
Yeah,
they
for sure.
overdo it, or did they over respond? I think regardless of how
Yeah,
you feel, either way, you're mad. So,
yeah. So, but how did you feel like
mhm.
when you got the news? Like when you first got the news for like, oh, you're like Sam called you and you're, hey,
Yeah,
dude, we're gonna do this.
it was the both of us, I think, weren't sure if it was real, because like you get an Instagram DM that's like, "Hey, I want to give you money." Like, okay, yeah, totally.
Yeah,
But it wasn't real until the check cleared, and at that moment, it was like, okay, now I think we've entered a new phase of this becoming an actual career, and
yeah,
it was interesting too because it was you're trying to figure out like, okay, is this going to be the game changer, like that a bunch of people will hear it, but it ended up
yeah,
being regionally locked to only Canada. So I got some more Canadian fans, but it didn't end up being like this global campaign. But the money ended up, I was able to buy this laptop, which made my music production so much faster. And so now that's part of the reason why I'm able to make more music is because of that, the opportunity. But yeah, I mean, like that's the thing to look out for is when you have something that not only pays you, but also is that broadcast vehicle that
yeah.
like takes you to that exposure level.
Yeah, and I think, like, because when you talk to a lot of young indie bands, they're
Yeah.
kind of hesitant
Hmm.
towards it.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, "Oh, I don't wanna be, like, a sellout or something like
Yeah.
that," but
Totally.
it's I get that, but I think it's such an important vehicle for indie music.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
it's when it comes down to it, like, nobody cares if you sell out a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are different degrees of selling out, right? Like having somebody pay you to put your commercial with or put your song in their commercial. You're not really, I don't know, it's that's like one level, and then there's another level where it's like, "Hey, can you change all of the lyrics and make them about
Exactly,
like my
exactly.
chocolate brand?" It's like, "Okay, that's
Yeah.
that's a different degree of selling out."
Yeah, that's a different kind of sad.
Yeah, right. But then again, I've got my price.
Yeah, for sure. Alright, so if it's okay, I'll write down a number and you tell me what
Exactly, exactly. We'll see
uh,
how close we get. Yeah, but
uh,
like also thinking about what it is in service for. So if you like one the thing that I want to do is I want to only make music. I'm not there yet, but that's my north star because I know that if I can get there, everything else can get better and then I can have more impact in the world. And so it's like in
yeah,
order to get there, if I if I gotta sell out a little bit, it's okay because that the net result will be more music in the world and more imprint of like what I do on the community and on the industry
yeah.
and the global sound and all that kind of stuff. So that's maybe just my way of justifying it, but I don't know. I don't feel morally icky about it. Maybe if it was the wrong
No,
company, I
no.
might, but you know,
Yeah, I think, like, there's always, like, this moral line, and it's,
yeah,
you can always say no, like,
yeah,
if
exactly.
it's
You can always
not
say
a
no.
cool thing.
Yep.
But, I do sometimes I do, like, small, like, talks in, like,
Mhm.
schools and stuff,
Cool.
and the thing I always talk about is people always assume, like, if you're not, like, able to fully support yourself,
Yeah.
uh, for your music, you have failed in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah.
There's, like, this kind of picture, "Oh, you're working an extra job, you're,
Uh-huh.
like, doing this and
Yeah.
whatever,"
Yep.
and I feel like that is such, a false image, and it's
Mhm.
such a bad image to project to people
Yep.
because, for the last I think it's, like, 5 years now,
Mhm.
I've been able to fully support myself on my music, but there was, like, 6 years before that when I was working professionally and I could sustain myself about 50%.
Yep. Yep.
So I only had to work 50% another job, and then I worked 50% with my music.
Mhm.
Um, and then there was, like, a time before that when I had to work,
Right.
like, 100%
Totally.
another job.
Yeah.
And I'm I'm so proud of those years.
Yeah.
I'm so proud of kind of digging down, doing the dog years, kind of
Mhm.
just, like, sticking around because so much of actually succeeding with music
Mhm.
is just pure just doing it,
Yes.
because so many people are just like, "Oh, I released a song, it didn't go well." Uh,
Mhm.
and you just have to get at it. Just, okay, your song flopped, do another song. Like,
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
so this didn't work. Now try something else. It's always like that, and you can't be you shouldn't be ashamed of having an extra job. You should be super proud of it, because it's 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 always going to be something that humbles you and keeps you close to what actually matters, and it's going to be the thing that keeps you, once you actually get there where you're able to sustain yourself, you're going to be like, damn, I used to be this and now I'm
Yes.
able to do this full time.
Yes.
And I wake up every day and I'm like so thankful for being like able to spend time with my son, being
Mhm.
able to go down to the studio, have a cup of coffee. It's like, and it's because if I just gotten it
Mhm.
from the get-go, I wouldn't like appreciate it.
Agreed.
So I think like, get the stigma away of like being ashamed of having another job. You shouldn't like.
That was beautifully said. And that, listeners, this is part of the reason why I love this guy so much. You just have
Thank
the
you.
right energy and perspective and focus. And I knew it from the first time we wrote together. It's like, damn, this dude, like, we get each other. This is great.
Well,
So I'm so glad
same,
that
same, dude, same, dude.
because that's exactly it.
Mutual.
That's exactly it. I mean, I work 40 hours a week doing my full-time job, and I woke up at 5 a.m. yesterday, and I worked on music for 3.5 hours, and then I drove to the
Yeah,
office, came back, worked on music again, and it
yeah.
was super tiring, but I swear there's an energy that you end up putting into that music. It's like that FU energy of like, I'm getting out of
Yes,
here no matter what it
yes, yeah,
takes. Like this is in it. And
it's the
you're
best.
you're breathing that life into that. And yeah, I don't know. And I also think that it helps you you just sent me a sick demo of a tune, and I write songs like this too, where it's like talking about that push pull of capitalism and kind of
Mhm.
like feeling like you're a cog in a machine and wanting to break out. And I think that there's something important as an artist to have felt that and understand that,
Yeah,
because then you can relate to people on a deeper level that are going through the same thing. We're all feeling that.
yeah,
And writing tunes to that effect, putting that kind of energy into your tunes, and also ending up being on the other side and having that gratitude. Um,
yeah,
I think that's all. I agree. It's super important. Super important.
yeah, and it's like, and it's so much like, because like all the best songs are always written in like just before bed, and you kind of get
Yes.
like this
Yes.
idea, and you say, "I oh wait, I need to," and you're just like,
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm gonna.
you're like mid a keyboard, and you're just like whispering into the mic.
Yes. Yes.
And then you wake up in the morning and you're just like, "Oh, I need to do this."
Yep.
And it's like that feeling is, and you just spend all day at work just like
Mhm.
thinking about when you come home, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna add that, I'm gonna do that." And it's, yeah, it's a and it just humbles you with like
Mhm.
with your whole being.
It
I
does.
I
It does.
I think, yeah.
And it gives you something to help pull you through. Like, I even felt that way at school where, I'd be in a boring math class or something, and there'd be part of me that'd be like visualizing the guitar fretboard, or being like, I just learned what the modes are, so I'm like writing down the name of all of the Greek modes. Even though I barely ever have to say those words now, but in my head I was like, oh, if I'm going to be a professional musician, I better know
Mhm.
that Phrygian is all about the flat two, and like all this crap that's like nobody cares. But back then, it helped pull me through high school, because I had like a North Star. I had a thing that I wanted to be and become. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember I was the same in school, and I remember just like every, I don't know if you have it in like in the United States, but
Mhm.
in Sweden we have student reviews basically.
What is that?
So
What does that mean?
so you meet the teacher like once or twice, like twice a year. You meet the
Okay.
teacher with your parents,
Okay. Yeah. 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 We
and
have we have we have
yeah,
this like once a year. Yeah.
yeah,
Similar.
yeah. So and you talk about, oh, this is going well, this is good,
Mhm.
and like every meeting for the whole of my like student years, all my teacher would say like, "Yeah, he's a nice guy. He does well. Like, but he's a bit distracted, and he's like a bit absent-minded and kind of not there sometimes. And I would hear that from like, you know, first grade
Mhm.
until I graduated. It was just like, and I think it's just like everyone, like, because we're always we're thinking about
Mhm.
a dream, you know,
Mhm.
we're thinking about the creative kind of essence of everything, and
Yeah.
just like, oh right, math. But
Yeah.
oh wait,
Totally. No, I know.
but
I
yeah,
really
but
get it.
it's really it's a beautiful thing for
It
sure.
is. It is a beautiful thing. I'm curious about, the cultural impact of a band like ABBA
Oh, for sure.
in your country and growing
Well,
up as being a musician, all that kinda stuff. Like, what's it like over there? Because obviously they're a huge band in the United States too, but it's gotta be
yeah.
a different scale.
Well, I would say like ABBA was the first kind of Swedish sound where
Mhm.
it like kind of gave the world kind of the Swedish
Okay.
way of doing music,
Yeah.
and it kind of set the tone for a lot of future stuff. So
Mhm.
we have, because that's kind of the thing where when you grow up in Sweden, we're a tiny country.
Mm.
We're like, well, now we're 10 million, which
Yeah.
is the size of Tokyo.
Yeah, right. I feel like the LA County is around 10 million. LA County
Yeah,
population. Yeah, 9.83 million. Yeah,
yeah.
yep. So you're like the size of
And we
LA.
have, and you know, like Spotify
Yeah.
is Swedish, SoundCloud is Swedish,
I didn't know
Skype
SoundCloud
is
was Swedish.
Swedish,
Oh, cool.
uh,
I
Tidal.
should have Skyped you instead of Zoomed you.
No, please don't. Please don't. Please don't. Please don't. I know, like,
Title too. I just got my my title artist profile, whatever. I'm setting that up today.
oh,
So
dope,
yeah,
dope.
yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Well, it's you know, like, or the
Yeah.
Wimp that was called before it went Tidal. So it's
Wimp?
called Wimp. Yeah. So it's Wimp, and it was like a Norwegian Swedish company,
Okay.
and JC bought it and
Uh-huh.
fired everyone and took the technology. So yeah. So it's not a super nice story, but it's kind of those kind of companies, and you know
Yeah.
those kind of, the same with music. You have like a lot of, you have Robin, and you have Max Martin, and like the Hives, and ABBA, and Avicii, and you have
Mhm.
so many like artists kind of pushing the envelope
Yeah.
and getting huge. And
Yes.
like you have
Oh
Sarah
yeah.
Larson, you know,
Yeah.
Tuva Lu. There are so many.
Mhm.
Red One, like, who
Mhm.
did all like
Lady
Lady
Gaga and
Gaga's
yeah.
first like hits.
Right.
Um, and you're kind of, so all these people are kind of showing you it's possible.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
so that's kind of, it gives you this kind of stage where, okay,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if I'm from this small country, like, there is like this, just go do it.
Mhm.
But it's also weird because at the same time, Swedish people are very, we don't like to brag. We hate to brag.
Mhm.
And it's kind of seen as a almost a ugly thing
Okay.
to brag.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called in we have a term for it called jantelag.
Okay. That's
So
cool.
it's
Do you have a
basically like
specific word for
you don't brag about your accomplishments.
cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and sometimes I get annoyed by it
Uh-huh.
because I feel like you should be allowed to be proud of your accomplishments,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it's also kind of the reason I think why Swedish people are successful
Mm.
in those fields, because it's just kind of, well, like, there's a story about how when Max Martin got one of his biggest hits,
Mhm.
he was in LA, and they were like, oh, for once, let's like go out and celebrate. And they like, the record label got them a limo, and they went to like some bar, and they ordered champagne, and they just like sat in a corner drinking champagne, and they were like, can we go back to the studio now?
Yes.
And
Uh,
so a lot of Swedish people are like that,
yeah.
because we grow up in like the darkness and like the cold, and it's just like, we just want to sit in a warm room,
Yeah.
like doing music.
And
That's
just
all
do
we
the
want to
work.
do.
Yes. Yes. That's great.
Uh, and I also think
Yeah.
like more than so than ABBA,
Mhm.
you have something called in Sweden, It's only in Sweden, actually. Well, there are versions of it in Norway as well, but it's very unique to our country. It's called study associations.
Okay.
So what it is basically, if you imagine like a state-funded uh, school in a
Okay.
sense.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So you start what is called like a circle, a study circle,
Mhm.
and you get money from the state
Okay.
to do a study circle. And
Uh-huh.
you can study about just about anything. You can study how to knit.
Cool.
You can study how to play guitar, how
Uh-huh.
to, and you just need like two friends. That's
Yeah.
all you need.
Yeah.
And a lot of these study associations uh, take the money from the state and make sure that there are rehearsal spaces and yeah, like they set up shows for younger bands and stuff
Cool.
like that. So
Man.
if you're like a young band
Yeah.
growing up, you can get a rehearsal space for like $50 a month.
Wow. Dang.
Uh, and you get like,
It's like
and you get to
$50 an hour
borrow,
here.
yeah, you get to borrow free instruments.
Man. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a kind of unique system,
Mhm.
and a lot of, if you talk to any Swedish musician,
Mhm.
they'll say like, "Yeah, I grew up playing in like a study association rehearsal space," because we all did.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh, I think that is also kind of a
Yeah.
perspective to it all. So it's, yeah.
No, I mean, in the United States, it's like, good luck.
But that's also kind of why you're successful as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of
It's a
drive in it.
it is a different I mean, like, but it's funny because the study circle idea, I have some Canadian friends that have, state funding for tour support or music
Mm,
videos. They have, like, this cultural like, council kinda thing that supports popular
right, we
music.
have that too.
In the US, we're pretty much I mean, like, we have some stuff for, we have a bunch of stuff for music education, now. That's part of what I do for my day job, actually, is try to get more money for that. But, that helps people, up until they graduate. But then after they graduate, we do, like, some grants for, like, blues, traditional music, jazz, but it's not very robust. My
Yeah,
Canadian bands, they'll like have, a small following and they'll be touring like 50 dates. It's like
yeah,
it's an
yeah,
but it's super cool because it's like, hey, pop music is cultural music too.
yeah,
Investing in that invests in your culture and tells your story. I mean, K-pop doesn't exist without the South Korean government investing in it, you know?
exactly. It's such a big part of like our culture.
Yeah.
Like our
Yeah.
music is such a big, so, and like I just mentioned like a lot of pop producers, but you have so much like on the metal and hard rock side and
Yes.
punk side,
Yes.
like have
So
like the
true.
whole death metal scene that
Right?
basically came from Gothenburg and Stockholm.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's a weird country.
It sounds awesome, and I really wanna come visit. 'Cause
Well, you're very much welcome.
and you've told me about all these sweet, what was it? You had, like, New Year's kinda drinks or Christmas certain kinda drinks and stuff that I wanna
Yeah,
try.
julmust.
Yes. Gotta get on some of that.
Yeah,
That
for
sounds
sure.
fun.
Must is a
Must is
must.
yeah, it's a must, yeah. I'm here for some must.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. I would love to kind of ask you a little bit more about your project because I just personally have some questions. Um,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
in terms of you have all these great musicians that you work with. Is do you view your project kind of like this like collective? Are you pulling people in and out? Is this like are there studio musicians that come in and out, or how did you connect with all of these people? How are you getting these awesome drummers to come in and how did you build this? And it has a very interesting kind of flavor to your band.
It's kind of where you find people who you resonate with, and you
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, you start kind of small. You do like you
Hmm.
just hang out and you do stuff, and it all I think it all comes down to just being open to kind of letting people in and sharing
Okay.
and being that sort of, where there is like I'm full of anecdotes, but there is
Yeah.
like the story about a really big Swedish artist, and he wrote like all the music in the band and he did everything. And they were sitting at the back of the tour bus and they got like their receipts for, ASCAP sort of thing.
Mm.
And he would like, oh, I got like 2 million grand. And the rest of the band would be like, oh, I got 2,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would be like this really kind of bad vibe,
Yeah, totally. Totally.
Uh, and like there are situations where it's supposed to be like, but if
Mhm.
you're like a band and it's like, and it doesn't have to be like, but you should always be like open to other people's kind of ideas. Like
Mhm.
I have this kind of way of thinking where my idea isn't always the best idea.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
even if I'm like super set on an idea, I'm like, oh, this is such a great idea. If like Louise, for example, comes in and
Yeah.
like, oh, but you should do like this,
Mhm.
I'll always try it.
Mhm.
I'll always like give it a few days or like a thought,
Mhm.
um, so you don't close your mind to it.
Cool. Yeah.
So we kind of built this collective of just being like super open and being like, oh, so you wanna do this and just make sure that everyone gets a cut and everyone is included and everyone is like and people just like join in and want to do it because it's fun and it's like yeah. So I think it's just kind of sharing mentality, I guess.
I like that. That's a great kind of mentality to bring to creative endeavors, music otherwise. Is like you have an idea, that's your nugget, but then other people can have this other idea and like being open to exploring stuff, but also confident to like know what's a good idea is a
Yeah,
delicate balance, but I think that's super important.
yeah, for sure. So like you shouldn't like abandon your own ideas, but
Mhm.
like you should at least give other people's ideas a shot.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like especially with guys,
Mhm.
when it comes to like female guy
Mhm.
structure, and
Mhm.
especially when you're in like sessions,
Mhm.
there's especially with producers,
Mhm.
and that's kind of why I enjoyed working with you as well because it's you meet a lot of producers and it's like you shout out something, you're like,
Mhm.
oh, we should try this.
Mhm.
And they're so set in stone on their own vision
Yeah.
that they aren't even connecting with your vision.
Mhm.
So they're just like, oh yeah, for sure, dude. And then they program something completely different.
Mm. Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and then you just end up with bad,
Yeah.
bad feels and bad
Yeah.
vibes and you don't want to do a collab with them again. Like
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
for sure.
Totally. Well,
So you should always be like you should always be open to it. And I think that's kind of uh, because if you succeed and you get to this point where you're making it,
mhm.
you want to bring the people along who you trust and
Yeah.
who supported you and who knows you,
Mhm.
because I feel like that is such the issue with when it comes to big artists.
Mhm.
It's always like they're so alone. They're always
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they always, when you like read interviews and stuff, they're always talking about how they feel so disconnected and
Mhm.
alone
Mhm.
because they have no one like who knows them
Yeah.
truly.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the important part because if you make it, you want to have people you trust.
Absolutely. And you wanna I don't know, I think you and I are similar in the idea of, like, we want to make it as a community rather than just as an individual.
Yeah,
It'd be way less lonely, way more fun, and
yeah,
way bigger opportunity for impact.
yeah, for sure.
You know, if you like, because you know how like there's like these music scenes that like CBGB like there's like
Yeah,
this or a Sunset Strip or like Seattle like you have these like things that coalesce and become sounds. I think we have the
yeah,
opportunity to do that, but cross geographic like landscape,
yeah,
like
for sure.
irrespective of where we actually live. Um,
For sure.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just like I think COVID, if it did anything that's actually good,
hmm
it showed people it's possible to do the thing we do
yeah,
across borders
Yeah.
with it's just like with just a computer and a screen.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really beautiful, good thing to come from COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, like I think like you and Sam, what you're doing, it's kind of the same.
Hmm.
You have your little bubble
Yeah.
of someone you trust, and you have like a this kind of little collective of artists and
Mhm.
people, and it's I think it's a really really good way of doing stuff.
Thank you. And I'd love to talk to you a little bit on Indieshake and kind of what you're doing on kind of the label and promo side, growing that network. You've sent me some really, really cool artists that I look forward to working with in some capacity in the future too. How do you go about kind of discovery, growing that network, welcoming people in? I love the kind of grassroots homey nature that you've been doing it.
Mhm.
It hasn't felt so much like a, hey, I'm a label, here's a contract, sign it and I'll get back to you kind of, it's bucking
Yeah.
that old style of doing things. So I'd love to hear about kind of what you're doing there.
Well, I think it started out with we got this really big sync placement with Samsung, and we got a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was a lot of money, and
Awesome.
it was. I
So
remember
good.
getting the call. I just cried,
Yeah.
I cried and cried and cried.
Yeah.
I was. It was really a big moment.
Yeah.
But because we had like this background with doing top lines, and we worked with labels such as Universal and Sony and Warner and Spinning Records and all these giant labels,
Hmm.
what we kind of discovered was like they suck.
Mm.
They really really suck
Mm.
because they spend so much money on basically nothing. And you would release a song and you would get like 10 million streams,
Hmm.
and you would get the royalty statement and you would be like, oh, $100,
Hmm.
because they would like spend 3 grand on blah and
Yeah.
3 grand on blah and
Yeah.
blah, and it would just be like this big bloated creature.
Mm.
So we were like, well, let's do it ourselves.
Hmm.
And we had a friend who had worked like with big artists in the EDM industry, but who was like an indie at heart.
Hmm.
And so he joined for the ride, and then we joined some other people, and yeah, and it was just kind of, we had so many friends and people who we thought were so talented and did such amazing music, and we're like, oh, we actually have the ability to take a bit of this money
Mm.
and invest it
Cool.
into building our own label, building our own kind of collective.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what we did.
Great.
So we basically did like a contract that is everything that the opposite of everything we dislike with
Yeah.
major.
Cool. Yep. Yep.
So for example, like there's a clause in our contract
Mm.
where we are not allowed to spend above 250 euros
Hmm.
without asking the artist.
Cool. Yeah.
So
Yep.
we can spend like 250 euros on ads or
Yeah.
whatever,
You're right.
but anything above that, we have to ask the artist.
Hmm.
So the artist has the like ownership of their own royalties,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's a very like disheartening feeling,
Yeah.
when you have a song that's really successful, and by like indie means it's very
Hmm. Right.
successful,
Right.
and you see someone else just throwing your money away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels shitty.
Of
you know
course. Totally.
and but there are a lot of like, actually inspiration for it came from a lot of like smaller EDM labels,
Okay.
such as like Suave,
Hmm.
which were doing like single releases, and they were doing like this sort of very very like small structure, easy contracts,
Cool.
low cost,
Hmm.
high royalty
Hmm.
payout.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what we want to do. And also all of our contracts are song by song basis.
Mm.
So we don't sign artists for like, oh, 10 years or 2 records.
Yeah.
We sign them for each song.
Cool. Neat.
So they always have the opportunity to jump boat or
Yeah.
jump
Right.
ship.
Right. Yeah.
And
Control.
and like that's really bad business. It's
Hmm.
super bad business.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
on paper, it's stupid as all hell.
Yep.
But in reality, it's really good because
Mhm.
people stay
Mhm.
and people want to work with you, and people actually you actually have a real connection with people and a real like they're not just like a number, you know?
Yes. Yes. I in
So
one
I think yeah.
sorry, in one of my business classes on the same kinda topic, I entrepreneur came into our class, and in San Diego, we used to be, at least where I kinda grew up, we used to be, like, the flower capital of the United States, like, we grew all the flowers, and then it's coastal California, so obviously that doesn't really make sense to do anymore because everyone wants to live here, and so as the property values go up, all of these people that were growing all these flowers in this, like, beautiful coastal communities are like, "Crap, what do we do?" Um, this entrepreneur was like first guy to go down to South America. I think it was like Peru or something, and he met these people who were growing flowers at a really high quality down there, and he figured out a way to basically put them on a boat and ship them up. And they just had a handshake deal because they got on so well. They got along. He really liked this guy. He spoke some Spanish. He spoke some English, and they figured it out. And now he's like one of the top importers of flowers in the entire United States. Is in Costco and all these like Walmarts, all this stuff. And I asked him like, "How did you end up structuring the deal later?" He said, "I didn't. He just kept it on the
Mm,
handshake. They said, yeah, we'll cut this percent, we'll cut this percent, handshake, no papers. But
mhm.
they were cool. They just were cool, and
Yeah,
it worked out. And so I think
yeah,
that like there are some things that don't make sense on the business perspective, but if you have the right relationships and the right people, all that stuff's just to sue each other. That's really what those papers are there for, and or to outline a deal so that you're like on the same page. That you know,
yeah,
but beyond that, it's like you're kind of using it to protect yourselves. But if
yeah,
you have such a tight relationship, you'll want to grow together. And if all of a sudden you're the weekend or something, it makes the most sense to bring up the people that you trust, the community
yeah,
that built you, and then you all win. You know, like, that I think there's just something special about it, and I think it threatens the corporate, hierarchy. Like, I've seen it with LeBron, because he came up with, you know, one of his friends from, like, childhood friends, and now he started a sports agency. He's, you know, he and so there was a lot of pushback, a lot of negative PR, like, "Who is this guy? Why?" And now he's arguably one of the top agents, but he came up with the people that he trusted, he built them up too, and, they had significant anti-PR, they didn't like it necessarily in the
yeah,
establishment, but
yeah,
it worked, and
yeah, for sure. And yeah, and I think like I think you and Sam are with the former, I think
mhm,
like it's kind of the same
mhm,
mentality and same thing. It's relationship based.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of the future of the music industry in general,
mhm,
because a lot of bands don't want to sign to a label
yeah, yeah,
because there isn't a point to it
uh-huh, yeah.
anymore. It's just like you can do it yourself. And it's true. You can do it yourself.
Yep. But there's a key thing that I think that the DIY misses is that it's so okay. There's a saying: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go
Yeah.
far, go together.
Yeah.
You can do both, and that's
Yes.
what we're trying to do with me and performer and my own personal music is that I can make music all on my own, and so I can go really fast. But
Yeah.
I couldn't go very far because I wouldn't have anybody hyping me up, keeping me accountable, saying, "This song
Yeah.
works. This is what you should keep going." Like, you know, that constant interaction of like, I'm not just making for myself, I'm making for the team. Like, we're all doing this together. That kind of energy is what keeps you going. And
Yeah. For sure.
it's like I've never been able to work out to, like, look sexy or something. Like, it's like that's too selfish. But if I work
Yeah.
out in order to hike a mountain with my friends,
Yeah.
and I don't wanna
Yeah.
slow them down, so I gotta be able to, like, have good fitness so I can get up the mountain with them, or help them if there's an emergency, I could carry them on my
Yeah.
back or something like that. Totally different motivation structure, and that one works for me. Just like, "Oh, I gotta lose weight so I've got, like, abs." It's like, I don't care, man. It just doesn't do it. It just doesn't do it. It's yeah.
I think that's a really, really nice way of putting it. It really summarizes in a very, very good way. Yeah. I think that's yeah, that says it all. Yeah. I totally agree. 100%.
L- l-
Yeah, it's just like you yeah, as you say, you can do both. You don't need to
Yeah,
choose. You can always like and relationships is so important.
agreed.
It's like the most important part of everything.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciated hanging out with you. Where
For
could
sure.
where could where would be a good place for people to find your stuff? Where do you point people? Because you got so much going on.
Uh, well, let me try and keep it short.
Sure.
So if you like indie music, check out I Don't Speak French. And through I Don't Speak French, you can find like a lot of different projects we're doing. For like Louise should have been here as well. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna mention really quick.
let's do
I
that.
work with Louise,
Let's do
which
that
is
next time.
she's
Let's do it
also
again. That sounds great.
yeah, she's a producer,
Yeah.
she's a songwriter, she's
Yeah.
super talented, and she has a lot of projects you can check out.
Awesome.
And then you have Indieshake if you want to jump on the label, and you have Swedish Red Elephant if you want to party.
Party. Party.
For sure.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Be sure to share this, like it, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit it with the 5 stars so people can find podcasts like this and grow their
Do
communities
it.
and grow their good vibes. I am Scoobert Doobert. You can find my stuff at scoobertdoobert.pizza. That's my website. And we'll have you back with Louise. We'll have a great time. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks so much. I
Awesome.
had a great time. Thanks so much.